swag vibe, baby.
Welcome to the Cup of Joe Show, where we explore the journey of recovery from alcohol and drug addiction. One story, one conversation, and one step at a time. I'm your host, Joe, creating a safe space for honest discussions about the challenges and triumphs of addiction and alcoholism. In each episode, we'll hear inspiring stories that uncover tools that make healing possible. Sobriety is not a one-size-fits-all journey, and you don't have to face it alone. Recovery is possible, and it's worth it. Thank you for joining the Cup of Joe Show. Now let's get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Cup of Joe Show. I'm your host, of course, Joe, and I am very excited about my guest today. I want to welcome David S. David has been in recovery since December 16th, 2009. He's celebrating 15 years of sobriety. His home group is Wicked Soba. You heard that right, Soba, in Peachtree City, Georgia, where he stays active in the 12-step community. Dave is happily married to his wonderful wife, Catherine, for 17 years. Together, they share a beautiful family, including their amazing daughter, Megan, and their precious granddaughter, Amelia Rose. At home, David is surrounded by his beloved pets, a Lab Aussie mix named Pete, and two Maine Coon cats with big personalities, Cosmos Kramer and Chester Cheeto. When he's not giving back to the recovery community, you'll find Dave on the golf course, in the kitchen cooking up something delicious, or strumming the guitar and singing a tune. So grab your cup of coffee, settle in, and let's get into it. Dave, how you doing today?
I am great, Joe. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. I've heard some of your story, but I'm really excited for others to hear about your story and the hope that you bring to the table. So what was it like growing up, Dave?
Well, Joe, that's a quite an interesting question, and I could answer that a whole bunch of ways. But I grew up in a normal family that was having children in the 60s. We were screwed up, and parents should have never got married. This is all in retrospect, learning what I know about the family history and whatnot. And early in my childhood, my father, he was working away from home. We lived in Santa Barbara, California, and he was working in downtown Los Angeles. So from the age of 2 until 4, I only saw my father on the weekends. And I don't know that had any effect. No conscious effect, but I'm sure that it did. I almost died today. I was born. I didn't breathe for the first 8 minutes or so that I was alive. And I tried to ride that excuse for all my problems that developed later on for a long time. But I had 2 older sisters. They were both real smart. They were both real pretty. And then I come along, and I've got all kinds of expectations put on me. Every time I show up to school, oh, you're Victoria and Rebecca's little brother. You're going to do great. And for a time I did, until I didn't. What I remember, the biggest change in my life when I was 7 years old, we moved from Newbury Park, California, where we lived in a beautiful big 5-bedroom house with a swimming pool on a cul-de-sac full of all young families, and kids ran around in and out of everybody's house, and it was just one big giant family on the street. There's probably a total of 40 kids in that 15 house community, and all within 10 years of age of each other, and it was a wonderful life, and all of a sudden we moved. My dad, we didn't understand it at the time, but his mother was ailing, and she had almost died the year before, and he wanted to be closer to her. So we moved to Monrovia, California, on a busy street corner surrounded by old people. And we didn't have a pool anymore, and we didn't have our friends, and we didn't have this community of what it's like growing up on a cul-de-sac full of kids, and that's when I was in trouble long before that. part of my story I share, at 4 years old, when I read the bedevilments on page 52 of the Big Book, Alcoholics Anonymous, basically that could be summed up that I'm a useless piece of crap. I felt that way at 4, and I started stealing. And by 8, 9 years old, I'm still feeling that way, and I discover sugar, and I'm lying, cheating, and stealing, and manipulating to get all the candy I could get, and video games, the same thing when they came out early on with Pac-Man and Asteroids and those games, and then I started getting loaded at 12, but my home was not happy. I had these expectations because I watched TV, and we watched Father Knows Best and the Brady Bunch and shows like that show these idyllic households.
Yeah.
I thought I was getting ripped off. Why isn't my house like that? And it became a war zone. After we moved, it was just everybody hated Dad for moving us, and we didn't get it. And it was a rough place to be. And I jokingly say, thank God when the Fox Network came along with Married with Children, because that was more like my house. More like my house.
Yeah, I was thinking when you said, you only saw your dad on the weekends between 2 and 4, not to go back. And then you said, you remember at 4 kind of starting to steal and starting to kind of act out a little bit. And that continued, until you say you took your first drink at 12. Is that right?
That's the first time I got a buzz, Of course, before that, sip of beer here and there,
Yeah.
I remember the first time I tasted alcohol. My neighbors across the street, the Holberts, had a bar, and I loved to go over there and play behind the bar. And they had the bottle of Galliano, big, giant, tall, skinny bottle, looked like a urine
know it
sample,
well,
right? And I stuck my finger in that one day, and oh my God, it's like, how can people drink this stuff?
Yeah.
Of course, I didn't have enough to get an effect.
Yeah. So when did you get the first effect? What was that?
Well, I was 12 years old, and I always wanted to be cool, Joe. I don't know about you, but I want to be cool, and if I could just be like that guy, over there. If I got the right house, the right job, the right whatever, at 12, it's more like you got the cool clothes, and you got the right bicycle, and maybe you got a girl that'll swap spit with you at school or something. And it was always somebody else. And I'm walking home from my square friend's house on a Friday around sunset. And these two guys, Jimmy Nevins and Kenny Couchman, are sitting in their lawn chairs on the corner, in a residential corner, and sitting under this tree, smoking cigarettes and drinking. And they're like, "Hey, Dave, you want to have a beer?" And these guys are 17 years old, 18 years old, got long hair, smoke Marlboros, ride motorcycles, got hot rods, and they're cool. Now, in retrospect, who's cool? How cool can you be when it's Friday night and you're hanging out on a residential street corner under the tree, sipping Coors Light and drinking Southern Comfort, right? And not a woman inside. But I'd always told my mom I wouldn't drink, I wouldn't do drugs. I don't do this stuff, and comes down to keeping an oath to my mother or being cool. It's obvious which one I'm going to choose. Okay, so I sit down and start drinking Coors Light and taking sips off this bottle of Southern Comfort, and neither one of them tastes too good. But all of a sudden, I got a feeling I've never had in my life before, and all of a sudden, it was okay to be me. Anytime I share, I always say, my name's David Staller, and it's good to be here, and it's good to be sober, and it wasn't always that way. And it was not good to be me prior to that moment. And, so I started in, and, I went out, I got home. I don't remember going home. I just know that I woke up with my first hangover. I go in the bathroom and I puked on the wall. Couldn't even hit the first time out. Couldn't even hit the toilet right. And I'm thinking, I'm never going to do that again. And I never ever drank Coors Light and Southern Comfort together ever again. But I knew I was going to drink again. And from that day forward, whatever you gave me, pills, something to smoke, something to snort, something to drink, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do it to excess.
Yeah.
One thing that I discovered is that people my age weren't doing that stuff. So everybody I'm hanging out with is 5-10 years older than me.
Yeah.
So of course I've got to drink twice as much to prove I'm half as good, just to, carry my freight, pay my freight into the club,
Yeah.
And it really had nothing to do with being an alcoholic at that point.
Yeah. Did anyone at that time, were there any consequences, Dave? Does anything happen
early on, other than a hangover,
Yeah.
And I said consequences that I wasn't willing to pay? No. Right.
Yeah.
My MO from 12 until I was about 16 was wherever I went, if there was, days of kegger parties and bands in the backyard kind of stuff on the weekends. And I'm showing up early and I'm standing right by the keg and I'm drinking all I can drink for my $1 or $2 that you had to pay to get in the party. And I'm just there, just drinking. I'm going to get fucked up.
Yeah.
Right. It's not about, let's just get a nice little buzz and chill. It was about showing off. Look at me. Look at how much I can drink. And I make a fool out of myself and I get drunk and throw up. And I'd end up under the bush, or I'd end up passed out in the bathtub. Or I'd be hitting on your girlfriend right in front of you, doing stupid shit.
Yeah.
And I didn't care. Wake up in the morning. Where am I? How did I get here? Calling your friends and going, gee, what did I do last night? Oh, you did this. Oh, I jokingly say, bad press is better than no press. They're talking about me at least. I'm not invisible anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's interesting to say about, you felt invisible. I get that, I get that.
Yeah. And I wasn't invisible. That's the crazy thing. In junior high school, all through school, I'm one of the smartest kids in my class, if not the smartest. I was good at music. I won awards for music. I was voted the best athlete in my class in junior high 3 straight years. And I hung out with the cool kids. But what was I feeling inside was nothing like what I was showing on the outside.
Yeah.
A good example, I think, of that is I played on a club soccer team. When you were on a soccer club or club baseball, whatever, it really meant something. It didn't mean your parents had money on putting you on a team and cart you around and spend thousands of dollars so they can get you a participation trophy. You had to be good, and you had to be invited. And I got invited to be, and I'm the only kid from Monrovia. The team was based in Arcadia, right next door, which was the rich kids. And I had this crappy ass bike. And sometimes I had to ride my bike to soccer practice, and I would hide my bike so my friends didn't see it.
Yeah.
And because I was shamed. Because they've got the nice GMCs, the Webcos, whatever, the bikes that, $500 then, 45 years ago,
Yeah.
And I've got a Kmart special girls bike because it was a hand-me-down,
Yeah.
And crazy thing, that bike actually got stolen. What a loser.
It reminds me of a friend of mine always says, we compare our insides to other people's outsides all the time, so what were some of the biggest lies you told yourself while you were active, drinking, drugging, doing all this?
Well, that's a really good question, Joe. And I'll tell you up front, I have to divide my story really from the time I start drinking and using at 12 until I go to rehab the first time at 19. And then I've got 20 years of in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous before I had that final long run and got sober. But, from 12 to 19, I'm just partying, the lie I tell myself, I just want to be the cool grandpa. My goal in life, it went from being somebody, right, and being a legitimate contributing member of society. I just want to be the cool grandpa, and I got this vision in my head. I'm 14 years old in high school, right? I got, getting suspended from school for smoking dope and whatnot. But I just want to be the cool grandpa. And I've got this vision. I'm going to have some house with a porch swing, and I'm going to be out there with my grandkids, teaching them how to do a beer bong right and how to roll the perfect joint and all that kind of stuff. I don't really care about what people think about me when all I cared about was what they thought about me. But I was unwilling to do what was necessary for people to think well of me. So again, bad press is better than no press. I'm going to do something to get your attention. Or the lie that, oh, this isn't hurting anybody but me.
Yeah.
And things like that. The idea, we talk in Alcoholics Anonymous, Joe, about, the great obsession of every abnormal drinker is to, be able to control and enjoy their drinking. So from 12 to 19, I never tried to control or enjoy any part of drugs or alcohol consumption.
Yeah.
Right? I'm just getting loaded. We're just going until it runs out or I pass out or I go to jail. So I never told myself, I can control this or I'll quit when there's a problem, because I was never going to quit. So there's never anything. I'm just going to go have a half pint buzz.
Yeah.
We're just going to go buy one joint and a quarter gram of Coke and split a pint of vodka. That's not even enough for me to get started, let alone share with my buddies.
Right.
So I never had that. But probably the biggest lie I told in the end, really thinking about it, is that it was my parents' fault why I was the way I was. If their marriage was better, if my dad had been around more, if we had never moved from Newbury Park to Monrovia, my life would be different. And I rode that lie for a long time. I don't know what else. Those are probably the big ones.
What got you to rehab at 19?
Can I say the word?
Yeah.
Crack. Yeah. 1985. Crack's just coming out, and I don't know nothing about it. And I'm at my buddy Ray's house, and he hands me this pipe. Says, "Here, hit this." And it's the back end of his hit, right? But there's still plenty there, and I will never forget. Like we talked about the first time I got a buzz and what that was like, but the first time I smoked crack, I will never forget. My first thought was, "Oh my God, this is amazing."
Yeah.
My second thought was, "I'm in trouble." Of course, you know what the first words out of my mouth was, "Can I have another one?"
Yeah.
And that was like September, October 1985. I graduated from high school and I'm working in the restaurant business. I'm driving an RX-7 sports car, and I'm absolutely insane. And all of a sudden, I went from primarily just smoking a lot of weed and drinking all the time to I've got to have this stuff. And I'm at my buddy's house every night, start staying out all night, wasting all my money. And my parents went on vacation, and I decided I'm going to trade my car for a couple ounces of Coke and 65 Carmagia. And I'm going to become, Scarface of Glendora. I'm going to become a big time cocaine dealer. And by the end of that weekend, I still got a few bucks in my pocket, but somebody stole all my dope, and I got this crappy car that I find out is all screwed up. And I had broken into my parents' house to get the pink slip to my car, so I could trade this guy. And because they had locked me out for the weekend because they knew what I was prone to do while they were out of town. And they come home and they're pissed off as all hell. And I guess my mom got on the phone with my dad. So they're split up at this time, and my mom's with my stepdad. And they come in the room and said, "Well, you know what? We can't deal with this anymore. You're either going to pack your shit and go to rehab, or you're going to leave. And you have 15 minutes to make up your mind." And pretty smart guy. I've got a few $100 in my pocket, but by this time, during that weekend, I had also decided to bail on my job because it was more important to try to become a big time cocaine dealer than it was to go to work. And that was a pretty simple choice. Okay. I mean, I've been running hard for almost 7 years straight.
Yeah.
I could use a vacation. I remember hearing some kid at high school, had gone to rehab a couple of times. So I end up at Charter Hospital in Torrance, and nice place. And I get there, and I can be a program winner, Joe. I'm good at doing rehab. I can tell them what they want to hear, and I can obey the rules as much as necessary to get by. I was there for 30 days, and they're telling me I'm an alcoholic and that I'm a drug addict, and what they do in rehab, worked for some people, didn't work for me. And the real thing, Joe, is that I was not an alcoholic. I jokingly say, I showed up with a minor crack problem and a back problem. My parents were on my back, and I needed a vacation. But they're trying to tell me I'm an alcoholic, and maybe by the 20 questions from Johns Hopkins University, I qualify because I answered 3 of their 20 stupid questions, which looking back, I can just change the drinking part of all those questions and change it to thinking. And my thinking without drugs and alcohol causes me the same amount of freaking problems. I can answer most of those questions, just change it to thinking, and I'm there. But I was not an alcoholic as the big book describes an alcoholic. The 2 questions that it asks in the first paragraph of the chapter We Agnostic was, if you want to quit entirely, can you stay stopped? Or if when drinking, do you have little or no control over the amount you take? And as I shared with you earlier, there was never any thought of stopping. I'm gonna, live fast, die young, leave a good looking corpse. Yeah. And the thought of control, just show up and drink a half pint or drink 2 beers or nah. Yeah. So I can't be an alcoholic. I can't. Right. I don't get that. And how I classify that, Joe, is do I take drinks I don't want to take? And between 12 and 19, I had never taken a drink that I didn't want to take. Right? And really that carried on all the way until I was 40 years old. I'd never taken a drink I didn't want to take. Smoke a lot of crack I might not have wanted to smoke. Yeah. Many times I'm going to, okay, we're just going to, I got a pocket full of money. We're just going to spend $50. And, a couple $1,000s later. Yeah. I'm broke and want to die. Yeah. So I forgot where we started with that.
That's okay. So when you get out, obviously, rehab, it doesn't take, what's the next, is there a next stopping point for you? Like, or do you just get out and start running and,
I went, so I did this 30-day treatment center and they told me I needed long-term treatment. And so I go, well, what's the best one? And they told me a place up in Impact, called Impact House up in Pasadena. Old school, hardcore, 6 to 9 month treatment program. You're slammed down your first 30 days, no phone, no touching money. Barely can go to the bathroom by yourself kind of place. And it was full of, and it was a Narcotics Anonymous based house. Almost everybody there was a convict. They're either, coming out of prison, they've been to prison, or they're going to prison trying to beat a case. And I'm 19 years old. I've had a DUI, and I got this little minor crack problem, but I'm not like these people. And, they're all junkies and convicts and junkies. And I did not fit in. As I was saying before, I liked going to meetings. The people were nice. They gave me free cigarettes. They let me talk about me. And they talked about this thing called sponsorship. And maybe I'll get me one of those. And I heard a guy, Bill Morgan, he's dead now, died sober, over 30 years sober. And but I asked him to be my sponsor, not because of his sobriety, but because of what he did before he got sober, which was he had a large bookmaking operation. And that sounded exciting to me. Fast, easy money. And so I figured I'll ask him to sponsor me and do just enough to keep him on the hook until he drops the secret about how to start a bookmaking operation. And at about 55 days sober, 20 days after leaving that hardcore place I was at, I find myself loaded. I wasn't planning on it. Nothing. I end up walking down the street, and I end up turning right into the dope neighborhood, and here we are. And I actually went and took a bogus 60-day chip, and that was a really shameful experience.
Yeah.
And I ended up leaving Southern California, and geographic, you could say. My dad said, "I'm going up to this conference in Seattle. I'll take you with me. You're getting in trouble again, and I'll set you up for a couple of weeks, and you can figure your life out."
Yeah.
So I went up to Seattle, and I ended up, getting right to the dope spot there. Finding, it takes us 5 minutes to find dope. It doesn't matter what town you're in, you're going to find it.
True.
And I'm running around the hood in Seattle, only white guy running around. I'm up there smoking crack and playing basketball, and I ended up on a fishing boat up in Alaska. And my whole plan there was, man, I can't wait till I get off. I got this guy that I'm on the boat with, and we're going to buy a bar in the Philippines and do all this stuff. And then he ended up ratting me out for something. And I'm, well, you know what? I'm just going to save money. I'm doing math about how much money I can make bringing cocaine to the Aleutian Islands, And I got off that boat and immediately took all my money and went right to the dope spot and spent all my money.
Yeah.
And I did that. Got back to AA 2 years later. And I thought I would come back before then, but one thing, I know we have people, maybe have a story like mine, been in and out a long time. There's, if you go out, there ain't no shame in coming back.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna shame me. I just thought these people were gonna shame me. After all we've done for you, how could you drink, right?
Yeah.
And I remember walking into the same group, 6060 Wardy Grove group in Arcadia, California, Monday night speaker meeting. And walking in there 2.5 years later, after I had gone to rehab again and got kicked out, but stayed sober. And remember going back there and this old guy that had been there before, he said, "Where you been? It's good to see you."
Yeah.
I was getting loaded. He's all, "Really? Okay. You want to read the traditions? Have a cup of coffee, have a seat. Welcome back."
Yeah. And
I stayed sober for about 16 months. And I always tell this story, and it's cool because I actually got to see this guy, Fred, from Monrovia, who I actually got a real sponsor, and I'm going to take the steps. Now, mind you, somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm still not an alcoholic. I'm a crackhead, right? But I'm going to Alcoholics Anonymous for recovery, because that's where the recovery was. And I'm running around Cocaine Anonymous at night because that's where all the cute girls were, But I asked this guy, Fred, to be my sponsor, and we get in. I finish my resentment list. And I hear him say something that he shouldn't have been saying at a coffee break at a meeting, talking about one of the guys he sponsored. And it's like, man, he shouldn't be saying that. Right? Mm-hmm. And I immediately, I'm not going to trust this guy. I won't do a fourth step with him or fifth step with him. And it took me a long time to get loaded, but I got stuck on the steps. I'm still going to a bunch of meetings. But I start doing dirt and outside of meetings the book talks about, you've either had the obsession's going to come back, and you've either, got a relationship with God or you don't.
Yeah.
And I didn't. And I go, go out on crack, right? And promptly get arrested, pick up a felony. And I haven't drank, Joe.
Yeah.
I'm just smoking crack. I haven't drank. And I'm sitting there in the county jail waiting to go to court for my arraignment, thinking, well, I'll just go to AA. I didn't drink. I don't have to change my date. All right.
I love the rationalization.
Yeah. And guess what? I get released on my own recognizance out of downtown criminal court building in Los Angeles. You'd recognize it from the OJ trial.
Yeah.
And I get OR'd out of there, and I got to walk about 5 blocks over to the county jail because that's where they were going to send me, had they not released me. And so all my property was there. So I had to walk to go get my stuff. And I end up these guys wanted these Mexican guys wanted some cigarettes, and all they had was beer to trade. So I took some of their beer. So there went that plan, and I come back to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'll never forget, the old days of recording machines with a cassette tape in them, and I get home, I've been gone for 3 days, and my message machine is full of people. Where you at, Dave? Where you at? I've only gone for 3 days, right?
Yeah.
But I'm the AA poster boy. I'm the CA poster boy. I'm going to 10, 12 plus meetings a week, and I'm everywhere. And I remember crying, and I wasn't going to come back. And I called this one girl, and she says, "No, come pick me up. Take me to you take me to the meeting." And I go pick her up and raise my hand as a newcomer. And in 1989, you had over a year in Cocaine Anonymous. It was only 4 years old at that time, I think. If you had over a year, you weren't quite Jesus, but you were the preferred disciple.
Yeah.
And people were shocked, like, how could we would have never thought you would have got loaded. And I'll never forget a guy coming up to me. It's probably the meanest thing somebody's ever said to me in Alcoholics Anonymous. He says, "What's different this time, punk?" And I had to ask myself, what's different?
Yeah.
And mind you, I'm still not an alcoholic. I'm just a crackhead. But I get a sponsor, get a new sponsor. I do a 4th and 5th step, but he doesn't have me do a sex inventory or a fear inventory. It's just resentments and whatnot. And I go do that, and I make some of the half-ass amends, to the family and a couple other ones. But I never finish the process. I'm just going to meetings and sponsoring guys.
Yeah.
Taking them through steps I really haven't taken, right? And talking at meetings, and I meet a girl, and she's the mail order bride from God, and what am I going to do? My whole thing, my whole life, what I get back to is that I violate myself, and I know that I get in this relationship, and she might be the mail order bride from God, but we ain't going to work. No matter how much I love this girl, we just don't fit.
Yeah,
this is not going to work, and I don't have the courage to break up with her, and she doesn't have and she knows the same thing. She don't have the courage to break up with me. So what do? We get married. We had this big, beautiful wedding with 5 priests and 200 plus people on the altar, and we could have had the Cardinal Mahoney there in Los Angeles, Catholic wedding. We could have had him marry us, but we didn't like him. I had 3.5 years and went out, and she dumped me, and then we got back together and we got married like 6 months later. But I drank the night before the wedding, and I'm drinking on the honeymoon, and I start smoking crack probably 10 days after we get married, and I'm living this thing about like I love this girl, right? And I want to do right by her, and I can't, and I know it's not going to work. You got all this crap going on, and we played that game for almost 2 years, and one of the big highlights of powerlessness, the true the obsession, not the powerlessness that's what powerlessness once I start, but also just not being able to not take the first one. And my wife had brain surgery. And she told me, I'm going to go and have the surgery, and you're either going to be here or you're not. And if you're not, we're done. And I wanted more than anything to be there for her. And we took her into the hospital, and she had a surgery, and surgery went well. And I told her I'd see her in the morning. And I was on felony probation at the time. And don't you know, I had to go test in the morning. And I go test, and I'm driving to see her. And, God's sense of humor was the hospital she was at. It's right in the middle of Cracktown in Los Angeles, right up the street from MacArthur Park, which is the largest open-air drug bazaar in the Western United States. And I'm driving up the street to go see her, and the car turned left. And there's Chewy. And I pull over, and I get some crack, and I go get myself a 40 Old English 840 ouncer. And okay, well, I won't do any. I'll go see her like I promised, and then I'll go. And and I can't not take that first hit and take that first drink. And I made it into that hospital room 5 days later. More than anything else in the world, I wanted to be there. And I can't say no to the first one. And as well as I do about the allergy, and once I put one in, all bets are off is when I'm going to stop, I end up going to prison a few months later. I like to rob liquor stores with squirt guns. And that's another thing, the night I went to jail, Joe, I've been up for a few days. I'm running from probation. Never even thought about it, but I was not checking into probation. And I'm broke. And I need a hit, and I need a drink, and it's a Sunday night. And I had been robbing liquor stores with this 357 Magnum squirt gun and getting away with it. And I figure, okay, I'm going to go over here and rob this spot, and I'll be good. And for whatever reason, I got to the place I was going to go, and they were just closing, and I'm pulling up the guys locking the door. I can't go there. And I go across the street to this all-night donut shop, and I get $40. Now, why I pulled right up in front of the donut shop, I don't know. Why I turned the car off and took my keys, I don't know. But I did. And I get out. I'm in and out 45 seconds, and I can't find my keys. I stood out there for like a minute and a half, which was long enough for the cops to get called and for me to not be crossing the city limits into the next town before they saw me. And I ended up going to prison for 7 years, But the best thinking I had the power to carry out, I always talk about this is when we hear people and we hear in meetings, your best thinking got you here. And the part that's left out is the best thinking I have the power to carry out got me here.
Yeah.
Because my best thinking is you don't do that, right? But I don't have the power to not do that.
Yeah.
My best thinking is always right. I know what right and wrong is. And I know I have a moral compass, but I don't have access to the power that allows me to live that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now we're up to, I go to prison for 7 years.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you got more questions on that or.
Well, what type of bottom was that, as far as from a spiritual perspective, Dave? Did that help you, or was it just more?
As far as going to prison and whatnot.
Yeah,
absolutely. I wasn't the guy that went to prison and was saying I didn't do it. I thought the sentence was a little harsh. I would have had a much lower sentence had the year before I not pled guilty to a case that for a crime I didn't commit. And again, violating myself. We talked about this, violating myself. I didn't commit the crime.
Yeah.
My wife was crying. When are you coming home? When are you coming home? And I don't know what would have happened had I just said, screw it, I'm going to take this to trial. And if I get found guilty, so what? At least I stay true to me. Right.
Yeah.
But I didn't. And so that prior case, went from spending 12 months in jail to getting sentenced to 9 years and getting out in 7. But that 7 years, I grew up a lot. You know what? I learned how to stick up for myself. I learned how to eat lunch by myself if I had to.
Yeah.
As opposed to having to be around somebody. No, I don't need to be around your insanity.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot about respect and how to carry myself, not as a tough guy, but really as a man of integrity when I was there. It's like I was in several different prison yards and I didn't play prison politics or any of that and get caught up in the racial stuff. And I'd get on a yard and be scary because I'd have to go up to the shot caller and tell him, hey, you know what? I don't play with you. All right. If there's a war on this yard and you guys want to go to battle, I won't be there. I didn't come in here with you and I'm not leaving with you. So if you got a problem with that, let's handle that right now. And they play little games but they saw quickly that, what I said was followed up by how I acted. And I got left alone and I had a lot of respect on the yard. Not for being a tough guy, but just for being, hey, he's not a convict. And so I spent that time in prison and didn't come out a convict. I just guy that spent a lot of time in prison and I stayed sober in there and I went to every AA or NA meeting I could go to. and I got out with the plans of never going back to prison again, and I never did.
Yeah.
I didn't stay sober though.
Right.
I didn't stay sober, and what happened there one more time. I got out. I had a great job. I was fortunate that I got trained to run wastewater and water treatment plants while I was in prison. I was fortunate that I had family that would support me because it cost money to get the schooling that you needed to be a part of this program. And so I left with the same licenses that in the state of Tennessee where you live, the guys that run those plants, same license they got, just in the state of California. Wasn't some prison certificate. And I paroled and did a great job in that line of work. And I go right back to Alcoholics Anonymous. Not going to Cocaine Anonymous, and every now and then Cocaine Anonymous kind of died. It fizzled, and it's still around, but doesn't burn very bright. But I got right back into, and I got a new sponsor, and again, guy didn't take me through the fears or the sex inventory, and I didn't ask, and I get in a relationship with a woman again. That I shouldn't be with. She was a girl. She gave me my first rep of hickeys when I was 14, and we met at the 20-year class reunion. And I'm sober, and she's a raging alcoholic, and I got to get out of this, and I can't. And I started doing dirt in my personal life again. At this time, I'm going to 10 meetings a week, and I'm sponsoring 5 guys. I'm going on 3 panels a month, and I literally went from doing a book study with a sponsee to the liquor store in the dope spot. And how does that happen? Talk about the spiritual thing. I was in a good spiritual place when I got out of prison.
Yeah.
But it's like staying in shape. You push the weight, you stay in shape. If you quit pushing the weight,
right,
you lose your strength and end up fat and happy. And so one more time, I'm in that place. Back to we talked earlier about the bedevilments. I'm doing dirt, and I'm no use, and I can't stand living in my own skin. And so what do I turn to? Go pick up a hit, end up in the hospital, almost dead, and I tried for about 6 months. I came right back and tried going back to meetings, and I couldn't get the sobriety feeling back. Which what the sobriety feeling is when it's good to be here, it's good to be sober. Like, this is good.
Yeah.
Couldn't get it back. Well, I didn't take any steps. I went to some meetings, and people were mean to me and called me newcomer. And that's a whole another thing. I don't. I don't treat people like that. But I knew I had some knowledge. I didn't have enough, but I had some, and there were some things I knew. And newcomers for me are people that are in their first 30 days of meetings. Period. First time ever.
Yeah.
Or people that have been around, maybe they've never taken the steps, never done anything in the program. Everybody else, if you've done stuff and you've had sobriety and you go out, you've had some recovery, not just physical sobriety, you're a retread, And we need to be slapped. Some of us need to be slapped around a little bit, but there were some people there. And in the end, I was looking for an excuse, Joe. Looking for an excuse. Yeah.
So what was the turning point, Dave? What
turning
was the
point
turning point for
to getting sober again?
Yeah.
Well, I first I had to become an alcoholic, Joe. I sometimes wonder, how do people sit in Alcoholics Anonymous when nothing in their story says they're an alcoholic? And some people can do that, and my hat's off to them. I just always kind of felt like I'm saying this stuff. I only said I was an alcoholic because I had to say I was an alcoholic to share in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. But I was just a crackhead. At this point, I still haven't taken a drink I didn't want to take. Now, what happened is when I go out, I meet my current wife. I meet Catherine. I tell her our second date, don't fall in love with me. You're the rebound girl. We're gonna have a good time for about 90 days. I'm gonna kick you to the curb. And hopefully we can be friends. And you know me well enough that that's exactly how I said it. I don't sugarcoat it. I'm just a plain spoken guy. And
I can see that.
And day 91, I take her to meet my mother. But about day 30 of this relationship, I'm loaded again, and I had taken a 60-day chip. where's that 90-day? Might even been a 90-day tip. But I got nothing. I'm just going to some meetings. And I finally got a connection that I could buy weight from, and 24 hours a day, and he delivered. I didn't have to go down to the hood and worry about getting arrested. And I got to that point where, you know what, either I'm going to, we talk about the jumping off place, and I got there. I'm going to, drink to the bitter end, or I'm going to accept spiritual help. And I was not clear enough minded to realize that I'd never really completed the steps, right? I wanted to think I was that guy that, the rarely guy, and rarely have we seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed a path. Like, I thoroughly followed your path and it didn't work for me, right? But I've got a fat bank account, and I can drink and use like I want to, like I've always wanted to, indefinitely. And AA is not going to work for me, so let's get this done. And 3 years, a little over 3 years after that, now I'm married, and I'm drinking a liter of vodka a day that I don't want to drink, and I'm smoking crack most days. And I don't want to do that. And I'm crying to my wife. I got to stop. I want to stop, and I can't stop. And I won't go back to AA because it won't work.
Right.
And I don't know what to do. And she tells me, if I come home, you're drunk, you're gone. And so now I've got the bedevilments in real life all the way as far as we could go. And it was time for me to check out. And I pulled my car across the center line on a mountain road. Because I was headed to the dope spot, but I was going to have to take money out of her checking account because I'm broke, and I can't do that. I can't live with myself if I do that. So I go head on with another car, and that was December 16th, 2009, state of my last drink. And the crazy thing is I come to January 1st, 2010. I'm not happy to be sober. My wife's telling me, you know what, we're not together. I'm just going to work. You're going to live with me because you need my insurance to heal. Yeah. And I had died 3 times on the operating table Christmas Eve of 2009. Wow. They finally figured out what was wrong with me, and I'd severed my small intestine. For 8 days, I'm just blowing up, infected. They can't figure out what's wrong because they can't see an MRI. And they finally saw one. They told my wife, he's going to die, but we're going to try one more time. And they found it. Boom, they take me in. The doctor tells me, like a week later, he said, it's a good thing you crashed your car, because I never told anybody until the statute of limitations had run out that I tried to kill myself, and I purposely crashed my car into that other car. The doctor says, it's a good thing you crashed your car, because when we opened you up, you had already perforated your intestine, and you were going septic, and by the time you felt bad enough to go to the doctor, it would have been too late and you'd be dead.
Yeah.
God can turn our mess into a miracle, and I was that, and I still didn't think Alcoholics Anonymous was going to work, but I knew that when my wife said, "Hey, there's this guy, they want to bring a meeting to you," my friend at work, they're starting a new group, they call the Red Cross group, where they take a meeting to people's houses that can't get out to the meeting.
Yeah,
well, I knew the right answer was okay. I didn't want those people there. I hate AA.
Yeah.
Screw you and the horse you rode in on ain't working for me. I've done your steps. Screw you.
Yeah.
But they come, and we end up having a great meeting for about 3 months on Thursday nights, and we'd have sometimes 15 people come show up. And it wasn't good to be here and good to be sober. I didn't see myself staying sober. I didn't think AA was going to work. It was nice to have fellowship. It was nice to have some company. Because I was by myself up in the mountains all day while my daughter went to school. My wife was at work, and I had no job and no car and no driver's license and no nothing.
Yeah.
I just cooked and cleaned house and tried to get better. It was a long recovery, and we lived that way I got to go to some meetings at about 4 months. I figured, well, I can go out now. I'm well enough where I could go out for a couple hours.
Yeah.
And I had to go because the court said I had to go. Unfortunately, all I got was a DUI, not an attempted murder or something like that. And I started going to this men's meeting, and I only went to 2 meetings a month, Joe, for the next 3.5 years, because AA wasn't going to work. And I had a guy I called my sponsor, Mike McNeil, who I just saw last week, 2 weeks ago when I was in California. He's coming up on 50 years sober. But he would come pick me up every other week and take me to the meeting, And I'd go to church. and we were big in church, but my wife and I weren't doing well. I wasn't going to be sober forever, and I was like Chuck C. talked about, just going to AA. I want to be even with his wife, what the real turning point was in late March of 2013. We had moved into the town. We had bought a house that God only knows how we got to buy a house, because we never thought we were going to buy a house. But it was right down the street from the AA meeting where those people came from that brought me that meeting to my house. It was an 11-minute walk. I still 3.5 years bone dry. I don't have a driver's license. I don't have a car. I don't have a wallet. I don't have a job. I don't have anything. I'm completely dependent upon my wife. And we're not getting along. And I go to this meeting late to get a free cigarette. And as I always talk about, the light switch to Alcoholics Anonymous was firmly off. And I walked in that room. I figured I could sit here for 30 minutes so I can get a free cigarette. And something happened. And somebody said something. There was a feeling in the room. This one girl, I don't even remember her name. I remember she was tall and blonde, had big boobs. It was really cute. And that always helps when the message comes from somebody like that. But all of a sudden, the light switch was on, And I start coming back to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm down at that meeting most days, and some great things happened. Like I said, I didn't work for a long time, and I was praying to God, I'm a man. I need to make some money. I need to feel I'm contributing. And like I said, I was Mr. Mom, and I cook great, and I clean the house and do all these things, but I need to feel like I'm a part of, and my wife, we're living paycheck to paycheck, and I pray to God and say, God, I'll do whatever you want. I'd love to make like $1,500 a month and be able to still be a stay-at-home dad. I promised Catherine that I'd stay at home until Megan graduated. And we still had 5.5, 6 more years to go. And 48 hours later, my friend Sherry calls me up and says, come on, David, it's time for you to go back to work. I'm going to teach you how to be a recruiter. And it's 100% commission. I can work from home. I can still be a stay-at-home dad. And, nobody's going to hire me. I can't pass a background check, and I can't do physical work anymore. So I can do that. Right? And I start working. I'm working for that first year. I worked 40 hours a week for $4 an hour. That's what I ended up making. And I'm still a recruiter 12 years later. Right? Had my own business for 12 years and had employees for a while, and was blessed to be able to put my daughter through college and have lots of cool financial things happen and able to, the coolest thing is being able to help other people when we're inspired to, and we've got to do some really, really cool things. But the greatest thing that happened to me, our friend Dave Gibbs, I knew Dave Gibbs from the Antelope Valley Men's Stag and from what's known as the hot dog meeting out in the hills in Lake Hughes, which is the meeting I got sober at. And I had a lot of respect for Dave, and I was afraid of Dave, and I'd always give him shit, call him Bill Murray and or Steven Seagal, And one time I heard him speak, and I went up to him after the meeting, and I couldn't even say, "Would you be my sponsor?" All I could say was, "Hey, you know what? I think we need to start talking." And he says, "Great, I got a book for you." And so he gave me this book, Dark Night Recovery, and it's a story about the AA guru in Los Angeles and going through this one of his sponsees going through the steps, and they would meet up once a week, and the guy would record the conversations they had each week. They'd take a step every week, and so we started because I was jaded to the big book. It did not ring to me anymore.
Right.
It was just a bunch of it's all bullshit, right? So I needed something fresh, a fresh presentation, but you know what? I show up to Dave's house. I forgot if it was Saturday or Sunday, for a couple, 2-3 hours, and we sit and smoke cigarettes and read the book and talk about our experience in boom, boom, boom. And when it said to pray, we prayed, and doing a 4-step, we both did a 4-step, and we shared a 5th step with each other. And guess what? You push the weight, you get muscle.
Yeah.
You know, I don't even have to believe in it. You know, I don't have to believe it's going to happen.
Right.
Maybe it can happen. I just have to believe in the possibility that can happen. But I've got to do the work. And I've been on a journey really for the last 10 years or so with that. And I no longer have to be the AA poster boy, Joe.
Yeah. That's a big deal.
I don't have to be everybody's best friend. I don't have to sponsor the whole world. I don't have to say yes to every AA request. You know?
Yeah.
That's one of those things, like the operative word in that request that's not there is the word reasonable. Right?
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of dinner with my wife and you didn't get a speaker this week and you call me to go be a speaker. No, buddy, it's date night. Find somebody else. And I don't feel one twinge of guilt for not being able to do that. It's not a reasonable request. Yeah. And so I've learned to say yes to things, and I've learned to say no to things. You know?
Yeah.
The last 10 years have been a ride. Catherine and I, 7 years sober, we're about ready to get divorced. We're probably a couple months away, and she got some help, and we got some help, and we ended up going to this group, Partners in Progress, Recovering Couples Anonymous. We started a group in Antelope Valley, and I wasn't going to go, but Catherine, someone asked Catherine, you should go. So we go. Maybe we're just going to check the last box before we call the attorney, and we got involved in that with people. My wife had a problem going to Al-Anon. Number one, she became an Al-Anon orphan because her mom went to Al-Anon 38 years ago, and basically Al-Anon became the most important thing in her life. And my wife might need some mom time, and they're on a phone call, and one of her mom's sponsees would call through, and she'd tell me my mom would always tell me that she had to get off the phone because her baby needed her. And so she got a resentment against Al-Anon that way. And also finding somebody in Al-Anon is going to be very difficult who actually has taken steps and also has a sober qualifier, and so she tried to go to Al-Anon, and again, she didn't find anybody that she wanted what they had who had a sober qualifier as well. But we found people in this group that, because only one member of the couple needed to be sober. And so we had about half the couples if we had everybody show up, we had about 14 couples. So, but maybe half of them both people were sober, but the other half, no. That the wife or the husband were not part of Alcoholics Anonymous, were not in recovery. And maybe they got to Al-Anon and found out I can't find somebody who has what I want. But they get to see these couples grow and see that, guess what? I can stay married. I can watch people. How do they do this? I can see when the big book's talking about the family afterwards. Like, oh, this is real. It's not just something Bill fucking made up in his mind, some fantasy, I can see this is real. When we moved here to Georgia 4 years ago, we got to bring that with us, and we've started a group. We've got a thriving group of a bunch of couples that most of them are newer in sobriety, in their first 5 years or so, and get to see some of these couples come in just like us with the deer in the headlights and daggers coming out each other's eyes. Just, I hate you. And we're just here to check the box. And 4 years later, the husband and the wife still sober, and they're still married. And they're making growth. It's pretty cool.
I think that's such a cool concept. I'd never heard of it until you and I had talked about it at one time. But just the whole idea of kind of couples recovery. It's really. And you said, maybe tell people who are listening, what's like a typical night, when you have like a couples event like that? Like what's a typical night like?
So typical night, we have our meetings here, Saturday. Usually we start about 6:00, and we have a potluck at somebody's house. So we don't do them in a church. These are very intimate gatherings, and we have anywhere from, sometimes it's just us and another couple. And here in our group here, we've had as many as, I think, up to 8 couples show up, and we have a potluck. and we eat for hour and a half, and then we'll have one of the couples will be the lead the meeting and pick a topic to discuss related to, and it's all about how do I as an individual show up based on this topic in my marriage, show up or not show up, and
right.
It's a safe as safe as a place can be, because one thing we do not allow is anybody to chuck their spouse under the bus. You're not here to throw daggers, throw darts at your spouse. Right. It's like, no, this is all about me, and I own my stuff. And so, we have it usually ends up being, from 6 to 9 o'clock or so.
Yeah.
And then we have coffee and dessert when we're done with the discussion. And when I read stories of early Alcoholics Anonymous, that is, what I see. And I've only been to a couple of times in my life in Alcoholics Anonymous where I had a home group and there was like a men's group and an Al-Anon meeting in the same place at the same time with shared commitments for the coffee and whatnot. And there would be a coffee break, and the spouses and would mingle at the coffee break and whatnot. Very cool stuff. But, we love it and certainly give a lot of credit to that vehicle, that we're still married, 17 years later.
Yeah. No, it's a big deal.
Absolutely.
It's a big deal. So what suggestion would you give to somebody who's listening right now, who's really struggling and wondering what to do?
Are we talking about a couple, or are we talking about somebody that's got a substance abuse problem, or what are we talking about?
Somebody who's got a substance abuse problem, somebody who's drinking or drugging and just needing a suggestion.
If they know anybody in a 12-step group, reach out to them, and go to a meeting and find out if you're truly an addict or you're an alcoholic, or if you're just a heavy user with consequence problems.
Yeah.
The rooms Alcoholics Anonymous are full of non-alcoholics. They're full of people that are they're alcohol abusers with a consequence problem. They're not. Some people might like this, but when the book talks about the real alcoholic and the 12 steps are for the real alcoholic, somebody can go, you got a DUI, you might, does that make you an alcoholic because you failed to show up for work because you drank too much the night before? Doesn't make you an alcoholic, makes you an idiot, makes you irresponsible. But that's not what an alcoholic is. Are you taking drinks against your will? And then when you try to control and enjoy your drinking, can you do that?
Yeah.
Our book talks about the difference between that heavy drinker and the alcoholic. But come to Alcoholics Anonymous and find out.
Yeah.
And before you do that, whether you believe in God or not, pray. Pray. Say, if there's a power out there, I need some help.
Yeah.
That would be the simplest thing.
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, I really appreciate you taking the time tonight, but I can't let you go without my rapid fire questions, sir.
Damn, I was going to study up on these and really have answers for you, Joe, but I didn't.
That's no fun.
I wanted to impress everybody with how quick I am, but
you'll do great. All right. Are you ready, sir?
Ready as I'm going to be.
All right. What is your favorite recovery slogan?
It's one that you don't hear much. Don't read the book, do the book.
What is your least favorite recovery slogan?
Meeting makers make it.
What do you think is your sobriety superpower?
My sobriety superpower, that's a really good question. And I would say this is over time, having the ability to, when I sponsor guys and take them through the steps, I can speak their language. The pictures and the thoughts and the feelings and the principles, put them into their daily language. I'm a Jesus follower, and I know when Jesus would he do parables, if he was talking to fishermen, he told parables about fishing. If he was talking to shepherds, he talked parables about shepherds. So
yeah,
I really dig deep and find out what these guys' lives are like, and where they can they can do that. I would say that's my superpower.
I like that. If you could say one thing to your former self, what would it be?
Wow. What would it be? Don't violate yourself.
What song do you play to lift your spirits when you need a boost?
These are a few of my favorite things from The Sound of Music.
Oh, I like that. If you could grant yourself one wish to help with your recovery, what would it be?
To replace sloth with its antonym.
All right. I know you're waiting for me to tell you what that is, but I'm not gonna.
I forgot what that is. But having the ability to act now.
Yeah, I hear you.
I've got an idea, but let's do it tomorrow.
Yeah. What step do you love the most?
What step do I love the most? Like practicing the step myself? I'd say step 12.
Okay. What step do you love the least?
Beforehand, step 9.
What is your favorite curse word?
Fuck.
And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well done, good and faithful servant.
Very nice. Dave, thank you so much. Don't forget, everybody, a new episode is released every Thursday at noon. You can listen to the show on your favorite podcast apps, Amazon Audio, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, and others. Just search for The Cup of Joe Show. Don't forget the. And also, if you can like, subscribe, and share, it is greatly appreciated. Dave, thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe. It's a good time.
And thank you all for joining us today.
It's just a laid-back vibe, baby.
We hope you enjoyed today's Experience, Strength, and Hope. We are so grateful you decided to join us. Please share this episode with someone who might need it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, no matter where you are in your recovery journey, you are not alone. Reach up and reach out to someone. Please do not suffer in silence. Until next time, let's take it 1 minute, 1 hour, and 1 day at a time. Thanks for listening to The Cup of Joe Show.